Donald Trump today took to the Rose Garden to wave a white flag, agreeing to reopen the government for 3 weeks without funding for his border wall. A close Trump ally yesterday predicted that the president's surrender to Nancy Pelosi was imminent after he capitulated on the State of the Union address. Today's crippling delays at the nation's airports, stories of hardship among federal workers, and the undeniably awful politics of holding the government hostage over a wall that no one other than Ann Coulter seems to want crashed down on the White House today. But the relief for federal workers may be short-lived.
So let me be very clear. We really have no choice but to build a powerful wall or steel barrier. If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency.
Now you like the laws. Joining our conversation, Phil Rucker, White House bureau chief for The Washington Post, and Sam Stein, politics editor for The Daily Beast, who's up on Capitol Hill. Phil Rucker, let me start with you. How did this happen?
Well, Nicole, it took a lot. We're 35 days into this government shutdown, and the president's poll numbers have been declining. There's been a revolt among Republican senators yesterday, and you've seen the airport security delays and air traffic controllers calling in sick today. And it all just accumulated to the point where the president realized he had to reopen the government. He had no choice. Now, there's a real blowback building here in his conservative base. We're already hearing, I talked to a former White House official a short time ago who said Trump got totally owned by Nancy Pelosi and that this is a devastating humiliation for him at this moment in his presidency. So there's a real, it's going to be a difficult period here for Donald Trump as he realizes that he doesn't have a single dollar for that wall. That could all change in 3 weeks, but as of now, he's given up on the shutdown, the government's reopening, and there's no money for the wall.
Jonathan?
So as soon as he did this announcement, I got an unsolicited text from a former White House official and campaign official, quote, "Trump looks pathetic. He just ceded his presidency to Nancy Pelosi." Trump, so this all came together very quickly. This morning, Mick Mulvaney had a smaller senior staff meeting in his office. People were sort of running around afterwards, still in a bit of a state of confusion as to how this was coming together, but it did seem to be that Trump was going to reopen for a short period of time. To put this in context, though...
What was it? Do you know what it was? Was it the airport scene this morning?
It came out of a conversation between Schumer and McConnell, and this was actually what Schumer basically proposed. But really, it was being humiliated on the Senate floor yesterday. I mean, the Republican bill got fewer votes than the Democratic bill. And to put this in context, Trump has spent 6 weeks in this state of, is it 6 weeks in shutdown? Something like that. Squandered economic growth to the point where Kevin Hassett, his economic advisor, says we may have zero growth if this continues through the first quarter. Obviously, anxiety and financial stress among 800,000 federal workers. And he got nothing.
He got nothing, but he got this.
But what he has is backlash now. It's intense.
Well, and we know he watches the polls. We know he cares so much about his polls. He tried to get Michael Cohen to rig some. Here's his approval over the shutdown. 37%. That's barely the entire Trump base is with him over the shutdown. Sam Stein, you're on Capitol Hill. What do you know?
Well, I mean, talking to Democrats today, they are jubilant. I mean, they feel like they have wiped the floor clean. They feel like everything that they wanted, they got. Yeah, and there's almost like a weird shock within the party and among lawmakers here that they did so well. Usually it's usually Democrats tend to eat their own and get chaotic internally and don't hold the line. But in this case, everything sort of fell into place for them, and you know it's being treated as a triumph for Pelosi. Still trying to figure out exactly why now for Trump. What I was told is it wasn't the air traffic stuff this morning, that this really did happen last night, where talks began to really happen in serious between McConnell and Schumer. But again, what was it about Trump what was it about those talks that led Trump to say, you know what, I've endured enough? Because he sat on this deal. He could have had this deal 35 days ago. Instead, he got the hopes of his allies up, he angered the opposition, and he ruined his poll numbers for nothing.
For nothing. Donna Edwards, we do know more things about Donald Trump, though, and it's sort of like a bully in elementary school. Once they're revealed to be afraid of, spiders, then you always know how to game them, right? So now we know Donald Trump is afraid of bad press and bad poll numbers. I'm not sure that's even a revelation. Nancy Pelosi, the victor by every Republican and Democrat's analysis today, what does she do with now being the dominant player in the Trump-Pelosi relationship?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One, she's demonstrated not just to the president, but she's demonstrated to her caucus the importance of holding together. And I think that that's going to serve them well throughout the Trump presidency. But with respect to the president, I mean, she clearly is on top. And, when you look at this deal, it was totally predictable that those two bills, of course, they were going to fail. The Democratic bill gets more votes. That meant that it was the leaders, the Democratic and Republican leaders in the House and the Senate, who were going to write this bill, and Trump is going to have to sign it whether he wanted to or not because of the failure in the Senate. And so I think this is a total victory for Democrats, but it really bodes well for the future.
Phil Rucker, this does feel like a watershed day, and I'll put both stories under that umbrella. In the Mueller investigation, you've now got a Trump associate in contact with a Russian intelligence asset, and on the presidency, you now know that Donald Trump will always blink, that when you take away the things he loves, TV time, the State of the Union, you could destabilize him. And when the poll numbers crater and you lose a vote, as Jonathan Swan said, the minority bill had more support than the majority bill, you've got him. How do they clean up and move forward from here?
It's a good question, Nicole. It is a real watershed moment for the presidency. Just looking at the debate with Congress, it's the first time that Trump has had a real check on his power as president, the first time he's had to deal with divided government and suffered a defeat from it. And it has to do with the core of his appeal as a candidate, which is that he was this master deal maker, this business wizard who could come to Washington, deal with all the knuckleheads in Congress and make things work, make things function. And instead, the government was shut down for 35 days. And I'm thinking back to a quote from Mike Murphy, the Republican strategist and outspoken Trump critic. He told us last week that it's like McDonald's not being able to make a hamburger, that this is how dangerous not having a deal on the border wall would be for Donald Trump and for his core political persona. And so going forward, he's going to have to figure out in these next 3 weeks, can he somehow get some money to build a wall, a smart wall, whatever he wants to call it, but something to show face and declare victory. If not, he may declare that national emergency, but that would be a huge mess and certainly a legal question as well as a political one. But there aren't a lot of options for the president right now.
Well, this was a Seinfeld shutdown. It was a shutdown about nothing.
Totally.
But this is also in some ways a Seinfeld deal. This is a deal about nothing because it just kicks the can down the road. And in 3 weeks, the president is going to declare a national emergency, which is an abuse of power, and it also harms military readiness because he's taking billions of dollars from the United States military and telling them to build concrete slats. I think this is a terrible moment for our presidency and for our country.
Sam Stein, let me play you Christopher Wray addressing this did become a homeland and national security crisis. Let me watch this with you.
Making some people stay home when they don't want to and making others show up without pay, it's mind-boggling, it's short-sighted, and it's unfair. It takes a lot to get me angry, but I'm about as angry as I've been in a long, long time. Sure, I get it. You're public servants, and I know I can count on you to keep doing everything you can to help others, however you can. But you're also people with bills to pay. You're also moms and dads. You've also got rent payments and mortgages and utilities and car payments and gas and groceries to buy. And you can't put those worries aside just because you serve the public.
Sam Stein, the FBI Agents Association, releasing a devastating report earlier in the week about how they couldn't take evidence to grand juries. They were losing informants because they couldn't refill their phone cards. I mean, there were serious national security consequences. And this was ostensibly a border wall about security. The shutdown hurt our security. And to see the president's FBI director really talking to his workforce, but also talking to the president about being as angry as he can be on television is just surreal.
It's surreal. Let me just say, if that's as angry as Christopher Wray has been a long, long time, he needs to emote better. That way, he's preternaturally calm in that clip. I was amazed that that's as angry as he has ever gotten. But to your broader point, the irony, the intent, the underlying irony of this entire shutdown was it was a shutdown over border security that made our situation on the border worse. There were agencies that could not hold conferences down on the border about border security. We had immigration courts that were overflooded with cases because we didn't have judges to handle them. So everything that Trump said the shutdown was about, he ended up hurting in the long run. Now, the question is, what will happen in the next 3 weeks to make this not happen all over again? And basically, no one really knows. The mood up here is like sort of cautiously optimistic, and there's a lot of talk of trying to find a way to sort of legislate a way to never have shutdowns again. But that's not going to happen in 3 weeks. Lawmakers have to figure out if there's some sort of fig leaf they can give Trump where he could say, I got my security, but the real bet right now is that he'll do something akin to a national emergency and just punt it to the courts.
The picture of this West Wing is more alarming than at any other point, and that's saying a lot. I mean, whose dead bodies are lying around the West Wing? I know he trashed Jared Kushner. The Washington Post reported that he disparaged Jared Kushner's expertise on immigration. And this is Mick Mulvaney's first crisis he's managed. As Jeremy said, it was a shutdown about nothing. The president's poll numbers are in the gutter. Who's running the West Wing?
Well, I mean, yes, he did make that sarcastic comment about Jared, but really, Jared Kushner has accumulated an extraordinary amount of power and is involved chiefly in the congressional negotiations. But what I find when I talk to White House officials, even at a very senior level, people who, when they used to have big senior staff meetings in the Roosevelt Room, people who are in that room, they really don't know what's going on. And it's a smaller and smaller group who actually do know what's going on. Mick Mulvaney, he's come in during a crisis. He's brought some of his own people. He's doing the best he can in a sort of scrappy format. But yeah, the John Kelly sort of strictures that lasted a few months, they are completely disappeared.
It gets scarier. Phil Rucker, thank you for your reporting on the shutdown and for being with us today. It's all been awesome.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.